She thought it was just another walk with her dog. But what Emily and Max discovered that morning would change everything. A police officer bound and helpless on a drifting boat. What they did next wasn't just brave. It became a story the world would never forget. Frost clung to the branches like delicate glass, and the frozen lake shimmered under a pale sun. A little girl named Emily tugged her woolen cap tighter, cheeks glowing pink against the cold. At her side trotted Max, her loyal German shepherd, his breath puffing clouds into the icy air. This wasn't just a walk for Emily, it was their ritual. Every day before school, she and Max wandered the quiet path by the lake, sharing secrets no one else would ever hear. Today felt no different, at least at first. Emily hummed softly, crunching over the brittle snow, Max trotting happily ahead, tail wagging like a metronome of joy. Neither of them knew that this ordinary walk was about to spiral into the most unforgettable moment of their lives. Emily's boots crunched rhythmically on the icy ground, but Max's sudden stillness broke the pattern. His ears perked, his tail froze mid-swing, and a low growl rumbled from his throat. Emily stopped, puzzled. "What is it, Max?" she whispered, scanning the endless white fog. The lake lay ahead, silent and eerily calm. Max's nose twitched furiously as he took a cautious step toward the frozen shoreline. His body tensed like a coiled spring. Then, without warning, he bolted toward the edge, paws kicking up snow in frantic bursts. Emily's heart leapt into her throat. She sprinted after him, calling his name, her breath burning against the cold air. Through the fog, a shape began to emerge, long and narrow, resting on the ice. It looked like a boat. Emily slowed, her pulse pounding in her ears. Something about it felt wrong. The boat wasn't floating, it was stuck near the edge, half on ice, half on water. And inside, a dark figure lay eerily still. Emily's stomach knotted. Max barked sharply, circling the boat like a guardian angel, hackles raised. Emily stepped closer, her hands trembling, realizing this wasn't just any walk anymore. Emily's breath came in shallow gasps as she reached the boat. The icy wood creaked under her touch as she leaned in, peering inside. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. A man lay there, motionless, ropes coiled tightly around his arms and legs. His uniform was unmistakable, a police officer. His face was pale, lips tinged blue, and a dark bruise spread across his cheek. Emily's tiny hands shook as she reached out, but stopped, fear rooting her to the spot. "Max, what do we do?" she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. The dog barked. Again, louder this time, as if demanding action. Emily knelt beside the boat, her fingers brushing the frozen ropes. They were thick and rough, biting into the man's wrists. Whoever did this wanted him helpless. But why? Emily's young mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Suddenly, the man's fingers twitched. Emily gasped, stumbling back, her heart hammering in her chest. His eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes glazed with pain and desperation. His lips parted, a hoarse whisper escaping into the icy air. "Help me." Emily froze, staring at him. This wasn't a nightmare, it was real, and she was the only one there to save him. Emily's heart pounded so hard it drowned out the sound of the wind. The officer was alive, but barely. She climbed onto the edge of the boat, her small hands trembling as they gripped the icy wood. "It's okay. I'll help you," she whispered, though fear gripped her voice. Max leapt onto the boat, the planks groaning under their combined weight. The dog sniffed the officer, then began gnawing at the ropes with frantic urgency. Emily pulled at the knots, but they were so tight her fingers burned from the effort. The man groaned, his voice weak. "Hurry, please." Her breath fogged in the cold air as tears streaked her cheeks. "I'm trying," she cried, tugging harder. Nails splitting against the coarse rope. Each second felt like an hour. The boat rocked dangerously, sending ripples across the frozen lake. If they tipped, the icy water could claim them all. Finally, Max's sharp teeth severed the first rope. Emily gasped with relief and worked faster, freeing his hands. The officer collapsed into her lap, shivering violently, his lips barely forming. Words, "Thank you." Emily didn't smile yet. She looked around the foggy lake, sensing danger wasn't over. Someone had tied him up. What if they were still near? Emily's breath caught as she looked around the lake. The fog hung thick and silent, but her instincts screamed something was wrong. Whoever did this might still be watching. She grabbed the officer's arm, trying to help him sit up. He winced in pain, his voice cracking. "We need to go now." But go where? Emily's house was too far, and the icy wind was already cutting through their clothes like knives. Max barked again, sharply, turning his head toward the path they came from. It was as if he knew what had to be done. Emily nodded. "Okay, Max, lead the way," she said, her voice trembling but determined. She helped the officer out of the boat, his legs weak and unsteady. Every step was a battle. The frozen ground offered no mercy, and Emily's small arms bore more weight than they should have. Emily froze, her blood running cold. The boat had started to shift, tilting into the water. If they'd stayed a moment longer, they would have gone under. Gritting her teeth, she pressed on, Max trotting ahead, the officer leaning on her for dear life. They finally reached the edge of the forest, Emily's legs aching and lungs burning from the cold air. The officer sank against a tree, his body trembling violently. Emily wrapped her small arms around him, trying to keep him warm as Max pressed close. For a long moment, he just breathed, fighting to stay conscious. Then, in a hoarse whisper, he spoke. "They were smugglers. I found their hideout. They caught me before I could call for backup." His eyes flickered with pain and urgency. "They'll come looking, you're not safe here." Emily's heart raced. Smugglers? Her mind couldn't grasp it all, but one thing was clear: danger wasn't over. She looked down at Max, whose ears were perked, alert. They had to move, now, before the people who tied him up found out where they'd gone. The forest seemed too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of their steps on frozen earth. Emily tightened her grip on the officer's arm as Max walked ahead, his nose twitching, ears pinned back. That was never a good sign. Then, from deep in the fog, a sound, a twig snapping. Emily froze. Max growled low in his throat, his fur standing on end. Her heart thudded like a drum. She whispered, "Is it them?" The officer's face paled. "Stay close, don't let go of Max." They moved faster, Emily dragging his weight with all her strength. Every shadow felt alive. Every tree seemed to hide eyes. Then she saw it. A faint beam of light sweeping through the trees behind them. Flashlights. They were coming. Emily swallowed hard, her little voice barely audible. "We can't let them catch us." Emily's mind raced. They couldn't outrun. Grown men, not with the officer barely standing. Then her eyes caught the old drainage tunnel ahead, half buried in snow. "This way," she whispered urgently. Max darted forward, sniffing, tail wagging as if to say, "Good idea." They stumbled into the tunnel just as voices echoed behind them. Emily crouched low, pulling the officer down beside her. Max lay flat, silent now, like he understood the stakes. The beam of a flashlight swept across the snowy ground outside, pausing near the tunnel's entrance. Emily held her breath. One man muttered, "Track stop here." Silence. Emily's heart slammed. In her chest, so hard she thought they'd hear it. Seconds stretched like hours. Then footsteps faded, growing distant. Emily exhaled slowly, tears of relief blurring her vision. They weren't safe yet, but for now, they had a chance. The cold gnawed at Emily's bones, but she refused to move. They waited in the tunnel for what felt like forever, clinging to hope like a lifeline. Then, faintly at first, came the sound, sirens. Her heart leapt. Max's ears perked, tail wagging furiously. Emily scrambled out of the tunnel and waved frantically, her small arms slicing through the freezing air. Flashing lights broke through the mist as police vehicles screeched to a halt. Officers ran toward her, their shouts mixing with the wail of sirens. Two of them lifted the wounded officer with practiced care, their faces pale at the sight of his bruises. Emily clung to Max, tears streaming down her cheeks, as an officer knelt before her. "You're a hero," he said softly. She shook her head and whispered, "Max is the hero." The German shepherd wagged his tail, pressing his wet nose against her face as if to agree. Later, warm inside a police cruiser, Emily looked out at the glowing lights of safety. She had saved a life, and maybe, in some way, the officer had saved hers too. And Max? Max was the kind of hero stories are written about.